Going on, YouTubers? I am going to try and do my best today and give you my honest review and thoughts on the trigger stick, the Primos Jim Shockey Edition trigger stick Generation 2. So I bought this trigger stick 3 years ago, back in 2015 during the bow season in New York. I used it for that season and absolutely loved it. I couldn't speak highly enough of the product. It worked great. I mainly used it for filming, using it for my camera tripod. At the beginning of the second season, when I took it out of the closet, I noticed that one of the legs was kind of hanging up, and kind of concerned me. After finicking, with it a little bit, I was able to free it and get it to work again. But at that point, I started to become nervous. Looked on YouTube, tried to find other reviews, and there wasn't at the time a lot out there. There was one guy that was able to show instructions on how to take apart the handle to make some adjustments to improve, I guess, some of the trigger sticks that were hanging up due to the the mechanism and the connections in the handle itself. I did that. It didn't really seem to help me at all. My problem had kind of gone away after I used it a little bit in the second season. And then probably like 2 weeks later, I used it in the pouring rain. And my belief is, in this design, you have a bushing that's at the top that the smaller upper tube slides through as it goes into this lower, larger tube. And there's a little gap there. There's no O-ring, and I believe what happened is water just kind of ran down in to the top tube, down into the lower tube cavity, and sat there, and after a couple weeks ended up corroding. I tried to fix it the previous season after it corroded with no success. I couldn't find any videos on YouTube how they took it apart further. I tried to remove this bushing, and I was not successful last season, and just gave up on it. Just put it in the garage and forgot it. And this year, 2018, I look on YouTube again. I see another review on how to perform maintenance on the trigger stick. So I took a look at that. I'll share a link here. It's Mine Yours, I think, is the guy that put this together. And if you watch that video, you'll see how I got the product down to the pieces that I have it in right now. Basically, you get it right down to the actual actuation mechanism that will lock up and hold the parts together when you pull the trigger. And basically what it is a little cone-shaped bearing, and another piece that rides on the aluminum shaft when you push the trigger. This trigger pushes down a rod, an aluminum rod, that moves a separate bushing that has four roller bearings. Once those roller bearings ride down on the cone to the smaller section of the cone, they can compress in, and that's what allows it to slide up and down. And that was completely corroded on all three of my legs. So the water definitely got in and made a mess of the insides. I have been able to, I think, free all three of them after breaking it down to the state that you see it here. But in general, I think, conceptually, Primos nailed it on the head here. This is a great conceptual design. Their execution is where they fell apart, and they used steel components that have relative motion, steel and aluminum, which you can get corrosion between the two. Even if they use stainless steel and they continue to use the aluminum rod, they would still have the galvanic corrosion that would cause it to seize up. What they really needed to do, just a small, very small section of that rod, have a stainless section, and the cone should be stainless as well. So you have stainless and stainless relative motion. If water got in there, there's no concern. It's not going to corrode if you use the right quality of stainless. So that's where I think they fell apart. They don't have adequate sealing to prevent the water to get in into that joint, and they're not using the correct metals to prevent the corrosion from occurring in the first place. So over time, if you're using this in the rain, it's going to eventually corrode on you, unfortunately. I think I spent $130 or $140 at Cabela's for this product. If I had known of this issue, I probably wouldn't have bought it if it was going to only last me a year. If I knew it was stainless steel and it was $20 more or $30 more, yeah, I'd be willing to spend the $20 or $30 more on a product that I know is going to last and live up to the use that I put it through. Unfortunately, that's not the case with this. If you look at the Primos website, they themselves have a comment on the maintenance and something along the lines of using it in dry conditions, not using it for duck hunting, not using it in the marsh, not using it in the water, not using it as a walking stick, this and that. So they hint around the fact that, hey, if water's going to get in here, you're going to have an issue. But I think it's completely solvable by just using a little higher quality material on the metals for those critical locking features on this design. So here, I'll try and show you a close view of the cone. When you take apart the bushing and you get down to the bottom, that's what you'll see. You got, I think it's a stainless steel lock nut there, and then you have this, I call it, I guess, a bushing or carrier. I guess a better word is a carrier that has the 4 roller bearings that ride on-side the cone, which is underneath. So you can take off that lock nut, and again, the other video, mine, yours, will show you how to take that part off, and you can see further inside here. Say mine were completely corroded. Here is just the carrier that's holding the 4 roller bearings, and the aluminum shaft rides through that, and the nut on the other side, and then on this side in here is where those roller bearings interface with the steel cone. That cone, you can see right here. Come into focus, hopefully. There you go. There is a ton of corrosion and pitting on that due to a couple seasons, I guess now, where I didn't realize it was completely corroding and falling apart on me inside. So unfortunately, if I'd known earlier, I may have been able to address the issue, but not knowing how to take it apart, and it's really not designed to be serviceable. They have the bushing that is epoxied on. It's not threaded, so it's really not something that they had intended for users to go in and correct and fix. But so that's the pitting, and then if you hit the trigger depresses this rod, or this cam that pushes down the rod, and then when you push down the rod on the other side, you end up moving the carrier, which is not on this part. I've got that taken apart, but the carrier rides up, and that frees up the roller bearings to a lower point on the the OD of the cone, and it unlocks it. So here's the actual carrier and the assembly together. So as I push the button, the carrier rides up on top of the cone, and those roller bearings can be pressed in, and allows it to slide up inside of the larger lower tube. So that's all well and great as long as you don't have corrosion. As soon as corrosion occurs, that really locks up in your $130, $140 trigger stick is useless at that point if you can't take it apart and service it on your own. Now, I did see grease that they used inside of the carrier to hopefully, I'm assuming, to prevent some of that corrosion from occurring. But if they just simply chose a better grade or better alloy steel or stainless steel, that problem would not be an issue. So I'm just left thinking, hey, if I get this to work again, yeah, I'll continue to use it and I'll have to service it every year. I probably wouldn't buy the Gen 3 or the Gen 2 again, for that matter, just because it's not really meant to be serviced, and you know, I'm going to use it in the rain. I'm going to be out. It may not be raining as when I go out initially, but I hunt all day, and there will be times when it'll rain midday, in the afternoon, whatever, and I don't want to have to baby this product. It should be able to stand up to rain. It's meant for hunting and filming the outdoors, and when you're outdoors, it rains. So, Primos, please take a look at this and you know, see if you can improve upon that design to make it more robust.